Hello everybody, I'm back. Last week's little film about how we put blue paint on Bluebird was very well received, so thank you for everybody who watched and thank you for everybody who spoke up in the comments. And people especially wanted to see more of these how did we do it videos. Well, how many do you want? That's easy. But everybody says, well, how did you get an engine to work? How did you build sponsons? How did you fix the frame? Never mind all that. Nobody ever asks, how did you get all the smashed bits of Bluebird out of that lake? How did you find them? Because it was a cold January morning when she went in and the front end just shattered like a wine glass and bits went everywhere. And we put divers in to get the big bits, but they reported seeing little bits and we said, leave those alone, we'll mop those up another time. And nobody ever says, well, how did you actually locate all this stuff? It's a bit like when you tell the in-laws they're going to be grandparents, they go, oh, how lovely, we'd best buy things for the baby. They never ask you how you filthily debauched their daughter in a hotel room to make all of this possible in the first place. I don't suppose they would really. But anyway, that's the point. Nobody ever asks that question. So today, you're probably wondering what all this gubbins is. I'm upstairs in the office instead of in the workshop. This has heating, well, better heating than the workshop. And today I'm going to show you our weapon of choice and exactly how we deployed it. Coniston water is not like the Bahamas. It's deep, it's dark, it's cold. The mud on the bottom is absolutely world class and it kicks up as soon as you get near it. It's just deep enough to need a bit of helium in your breathing mix to kill the narcosis you get from high pressure nitrogen. So you can either be stoned or you can suffer longer decompression penalties because helium reaches parts of the body other molecules can't reach, and it also wreaks havoc with you trying to maintain your body temperature. So you have those problems. And people have often asked, well, why couldn't the Navy find Campbell in '67? And you have to visualise trying to search an area about the size of 2 football fields, right? And you're going to be lowered down there on a rope from 140 feet up. So you can't go too far from the end of your rope. And it is the darkest moonless night you've ever known, and there's a thick fog, and you're stunned because you haven't got any helium because it's 1967. And you've got about 10 minutes down there with your phone light to try and locate a body. And you can do that for 10 minutes in a day, and you've got to get out of there. Oh, and you're looking in the wrong place. That is why the Navy didn't find Campbell in '67. And obviously, we weren't going to go through that rigmarole because we'd still be there yet. So we took technology to the party. And the first and foremost bit of technology was sidescan sonar, which is what this is. Now, we took a very primitive system in 2001 and it let us find the main part of the wreck and all the big bits. We took a primitive scanning sonar, which is a different animal I'll do some other time, and we worked that right to the limits of its capability and we found Campbell's body. But we knew there was a lot of stuff remaining and we knew that to get it out, we were going to need better technology. And we were also doing a lot of work with drug enforcement, law enforcement, counter-terrorism after this. And we set about developing a new sidescan sonar for that work and mainly to go back to the lake, which we did in 2007. Not everybody knows that. We went back to the lake in 2007 to mop up all the bits we'd missed in 2001 and make sure that we had as much material as possible for the rebuild. And this is what we took. Now, sidescan sonar, as the name would suggest, looks sideways. It fires 2 big fans of sound out into the water, either side of a towed vehicle, a towfish, or a fish as we call it. This is a towfish, that's a towfish. These are the towed vehicles. And it fires 2 big fans of sound out of the side. And the sound disappears off through the water column, and some of it comes back, some of it doesn't. If it hits something, it comes back. And the software knows how long it's been away. It knew when it sent it, it knows when it's just arrived back. Therefore, it knows how far away the target is. Not all of it comes back, it might just be a little bit, which gives you an idea as to the density of the thing you just hit. So if you get something hard like metal, it'll ding and it'll reflect, something a bit softer like wood, you get a fainter signal. And it also casts shadows behind it. And it creates an image, line by line by line by line by line, like an old TV set, but it's an image made of sound and not light, which makes a few crucial differences. And it has a few drawbacks. You've got to get this thing down near the job, which is tricky. I'll come back to that. Because it looks to the sides, it doesn't look down, so there's a bit in the middle where it can't see. And in order to make sure you map that bit, you've got to overlap your lines to make sure the bit down the middle you missed on the last line you pick up on the next line. It depends on all kinds of things. How reflective is the lake bed or the seabed? If you've got sand or rocks, that reflects really well. And if you're trying to look at targets against that, it can be difficult to see. On the other hand, Coniston water, the bottom is made of the finest mud in creation, and it just swallows sound. It's like shouting into a pillow. So you can put a load of sound in the water, knowing it's not coming back and going to blind you. If you get too much reflection, it's like overexposing a film. You've lost it. And if you don't get enough sound coming back, it can be too dark and you can't always pull the detail out. So it's like setting up the exposure on a camera, which I'm not very good at. But this it's a bit of a black art to get the right amount of sound in the water against the right background. Then you have, what is your target made of? Is it metal? Is it wood? Is it a body? Bodies are difficult because bodies are made of water and sonar goes through water. So bodies are very hard to find. You're normally looking for boots or bags or belt buckles, this kind of thing. Divers will have got bottles on their back, that's not so bad. But bodies are very difficult. Anything with air in it is very easy. So you need to have an idea for what it is you're looking for. And then its orientation can make a big difference because this is sound waves and not light. I mean, for example, take my mobile phone, tatty old thing. If you shot it that way, you're just going to see a long slither down that side. If you shoot it that way, you're going to see a nice man-made rectangle. So it can depend very much on how your target lands. But that is essentially how sidescan works. And this is, these difficulties have cropped up a few times. I mean, I was asked to do some work with some of the police underwater search units. I worked with them or trained with most of them at some point back in the day. And I was invited to help out on a very high-profile murder case. Now, we arrived, our boat, our team, found the inspector. What do you want us to do? And he said, go out there and find a thing. And I said, well, what is the thing? And he said, I can't tell you, it's secret. So, well, how do I know I found it? He said, well, if you just show us everything you find, we'll tell you what's relevant. So I said, yes, but if I don't know what I'm looking for, I don't know how to look for it. If it's the size of a fridge, I'll look for fridge-sized things. If it's a mobile phone, I'll look for mobile phone-sized things. I could miss a fridge looking for a phone. I could miss a phone looking for a fridge. I could waste your time on 10 fridges when you wanted a phone. And how did it get there? Was it thrown from the shore? Because you can't throw a fridge very far. You could do a bit better with a phone. Or was it dropped from a boat? There's all these questions. If you're looking for a hammer, for example, which we've been sent to do, you're looking for a hammer on a pebbly riverbed, it's going to look like a hammer. You look for a hammer on a muddy lake bed, you're looking for a thing that's sticking up like that. Just the handle. And, one day they said, oh, we're going to go look for a murder victim, and intelligence says this victim's been wrapped in a carpet. Brilliant from my point of view. I'm not looking for a body anymore, I'm looking for a roll of carpet. So all of this stuff is very relevant. And it was especially relevant when you're looking on the bottom of a muddy lake for little tiny shards and fragments and bits and pieces. We knew what we're looking for, we knew how it should reflect, we knew what the mud was going to do. We know roughly, we knew how these things got there and how they'd landed. And that is all priceless information. And now we get to the biggest drawback with a side scan system. Because as with everything, inevitably physics gets in your way. And there's this trade-off between resolution and range. Now you obviously want to look as far as you can when you're searching. And if you're looking for the Hood or the Bismarck or the Titanic, that's fine. You don't need high resolution. All you need to know is there's a big lump over there. And it could be thousands of meters away. And you can put a very low frequency sound into the water and it will travel that far. When there might be a stadium gig going on somewhere miles from you and you can hear the bass line, boom, 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 or you see the car with the windows wound up and boom, boom, boom. Because the low frequencies travel the furthest. The higher frequencies are attenuated that bit more quickly. And it's the same in water. And if you want to find a big target, fine. You put a low frequency out there and it goes for miles. But we're not looking for big targets, we're looking for small targets. And the problem with it is the wavelength of the sound. Now, if you've got a low frequency, you've got a wavelength, and you can lose things in the gaps. So if you've got a low frequency and a long wavelength, your resolution's terrible. Go to the other extreme. You go to get your unborn child ultrasounded, and you get incredible detail. And that runs a very high frequency transducer. But it'll only go about as far as the baby. So you get everything in between. High frequency, low range with good resolution. Low frequency, no resolution but a lot of range, because you get to the high frequencies and your wavelengths like this and nothing can hide. So we had to get around this, and first of all we wanted a broad area map of the lake bed. So we knew if there was any horrible hazards, you know, there's bits of rock stick out and how steep's the shore as you're going to approach it with your sonar, and if there's anything obvious that's going to show up. So we mapped the whole area at low frequency. Now, low frequency, that's that one, I'll come out of this. Then we had an intermediate frequency for getting a bit closer, that one. And then we had this one for taking photographs, more or less. Now, this system was developed from a collision avoidance sonar that was used on remotely operated vehicles. And you'd have one of these down either side of the vehicle, and it would look out to the side. So the operator would know where the oil rig was. And there'd be another sonar on the front that would prevent them crashing into anything. And that's all it did. But the image quality from it was superb. So we worked with System Technologies in Ulverston and Tritech in Aberdeen to convert this collision avoidance sonar into a large area mapping tool. And our job was to design the vehicle, that bit, and they supplied the hardware and they did the software and the data logging and all that sort of thing. Now, the gubbins inside comprises a pair of transducers, and in there is a piezoelectric crystal which is finely tuned to a particular frequency. And you have one that looks that way and you have one that looks that way, through side scan. And they're connected, green for starboard, so you know that one goes to the right. They're connected to an electronics bottle. Again, green for starboard, red for port, so you can't wire them up back and front. That's very confusing. We did that once and got a reversed image and could not interpret it, so you don't want to do that. And in there is a little computer which takes information from the surface. The surface tells you what to do. This thing instructs the transducers go crack, crack, crack. The sound comes back, the data comes up, and it arrives topside to be interpreted. But you have to fly all this in a straight line at the right height, which meant making the vehicle to put it in. And that's what we did here. Now, we had a few goes at this. We used stainless steel tube and we made adjustable mounts for it, and we flew it off the boat for weeks to get it to fly dead level, straight line. You can't have it do this because it just distorts your data. You want your beams of sound to go like that. You don't want one going forwards and one going back and then the next minute the opposite. You're not going to know what you're looking at. So this was quite a long time in development. The first stainless steel tube was then retired. This one is machined from solid aluminium. The carrier inside for the transducers is machined from nylon, and it has a link at the back that breaks away if you hang your fish up, which you'd never hang your fish up. That is a cardinal sin. It has a big heavy stainless steel nose to get it down because you want it to be heavy. You just got to sink, there's no point otherwise. And at the back it has a tail section and it has two little plastic fins such that it will fly in a straight line. So that is the vehicle, that is the transducers. And it wasn't only tested off the back of the boat, it also went into a proper test tank where it was run up with the software to make sure that it was pinging and recovering data and all of that up to the required standard. And then, and only then, did we mount it up to the boat. Now it runs on the end of a cable. There's 300 meters of cable which take data down and send power down and bring data back. There is the top end for the operators to do all the fine tuning. And then, and only then, did we take it to Coniston to do some work with it. And the first job was the large area mapping with the 150 kilohertz transducers. They can look the whole width of the lake. You can look from shore to shore with those. These are 375 kilohertz, which give you a good compromise. You've got about 100 meters range with those and pretty damn good resolution by the standards of the day. I must point out that this system we built was run first in 2007 and it's a bit out of date now. There's better sidescan, there's more powerful computers, there's better software for processing the data. But in its day, this was absolutely brilliant and still give a good account of itself today. And these transducers are 675 kilohertz and these will resolve your mobile phone. So it was large area map, home in on what we want to find, nail it down with that one. Sounds simple, but we're just getting to the hard part now. So now you've got your side scan system and you've got your boat and your cable and your computers and your monitors and your navigation and all of that. There's still a lot to consider. For example, you need to know what the lake bed's up to. It's no good finding at one end of your survey area it suddenly comes up, because you're going to arrive there and your fish is going to pile into the bottom. So before you go anywhere, you have to do a bit of a bathymetric survey and work out whether it's nice and flat. If you're surveying near the shore, how quickly does the shore come up? You need all that information, because you're going to have to anticipate it. You're going to have to lay out a survey grid that accounts for overlapping your lines, that accounts for the maximum width of your survey, the maximum length of your survey. You have to think of things like weather, because you're travelling slowly, you need constant speed. One good punch in the face with a gust of wind can take all the speed off the boat, and then the fish will plummet. Because the fish isn't straight up and down, it's trailed behind on a cable, and as soon as you slow the boat down, a slack in the cable, just and down it goes into the mud. That distance between where the fish is and where the boat is called layback. Now, when we surveyed Britannic in 2003, and if you Google Britannic sidescan, you'll see our images, they're still there 20 years later. We had 200 metres of layback. So our boat was 200 metres ahead of where the fish was. So we were basically having to navigate mentally 200 metres behind where we actually were to keep the fish out of the wreck, whilst running straight lines alongside at the right height and the right imagery. That is pretty difficult. And then you might have, if there's tide, you might have a bit of offset. Your boat might be here, but your fish might be there because the tide's got a hold of it. Any little crosswinds, and you're trying to steer straight lines, and they're very, very rarely straight. You don't always have this luxury. I mean, we surveyed Korfjord at Alta, the top of Norway, which is where the Tirpitz, the Neisnau and the Scharnhorst were moored, Tirpitz in particular. And it's in a bowl, and Tirpitz was attacked there by the X-craft submarines in Operation Source, and then once they'd fixed the damage from the X-craft, they moved it to the south anchorage, and it was attacked there by the Fleet Air Arm Museum and blown to bits. And the bottom of Korfjord is just treasure. And we went up there in 2005 and we surveyed it, and we found lots of, and that is an absolutely cracking story. So if you want to hear about that one, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and then you'll not miss it. But the point I'm making is there was no way you could survey that in straight lines. It was like surveying in a big salad bowl, and yet we had to fly in and round, and we still had to know where the fish was. So you have all of that to think about at any given moment. Something else to consider, a vital part of the process, is that when you reach the end of a line, you've got to turn. Well, you can't just turn, because you've got that problem with the slack in the cable. And if you just try and turn, the fish will hit the bottom. So you have to run past the end of your survey line, not just the boat past the end of the survey line. The fish has to get over the line. Still straight, still the right height, still the right speed. Then and only then can you begin to turn. But the turn has to be a big, long, lazy thing, and you have to account at all times for what the lake bed's doing. If it's coming up, you need the winch man ready to lift it up. A big, lazy turn, and then settle in for your next line. But you've got to be settled in, constant speed, constant height, fish in a straight line, before you get to the start of the line. You can't come into it at a funny angle, because your fish will be over there or over there. You have to be set up and true before the boat enters that search line, and that way the fish will follow. And then all the way through that line and out the other end, fish out the other end, before you make the turn. So the turns quite often can take longer than the lines. And the temptation to try and hurry it, you just can't. You've got to do it right. Or you'll end up with gaps in your data, and the thing you're looking for could be in the gap. And that is bad. And you might have other factors. If you're out on a lumpy day and your boat's doing this, it'll pull on the tether and your imagery will get heaving it, and you're trying to fly a perfectly constant height with your fish. And when you've got this bit of heave going on, generally, it's not a very nice day. It can be a bit snotty. And that also creates, because the sound comes out of the sonar in a big fan shape, so it looks up as well as down. And it will see the surface. And if the surface is choppy, that'll be overlaid on what you're trying to look at the bottom. And you have to know what's surface return and what is bottom return. I mean, you're better on a nice flat calm day. And then you'll get things like, especially in the Lake District, you'll get some motorboats. You'll be looking at a beautiful flat bottom, and a motorboat will go zzz along the surface, and all that sound goes down to your fish and draws a picture of a wibbly caterpillar, which is actually on the surface over there and not on the bottom. But when you look at the image, because the image is made with sound rather than light, and it looks up and it looks down, you'll get your caterpillars on your job. But get it right. If you get it right, you get some incredible data. You really do. But to achieve those aims, the crew has to be absolutely tip-top and on it. I mean, this is an example of how not to do a mosaic. The lines aren't straight, there's gaps in it, it's missed bits, but it was shot in 20 metres of water in a gale in the North Sea, avoiding lobster pots and other shipping, so it's kind of okay. This is a better one. This is one we did with the Metropolitan Police Underwater Search Unit ahead of the 2012 Olympics, and this was to look at the bottom of the London docks for potential bombs and this sort of thing. And this is much nicer. You can see basically the bottom of the London docks has been taken away, and you can see all the pilings and bits and bobs lying in there. So that's kind of how you're supposed to do it. But to achieve that, we always use 3 crew, 3 distinct roles. You take another person, they just disrupt you. 3 crew works the best. First job, boat skipper. Boat skipper's job, drive straight lines. That's it. Follow the survey grid, follow the chart plotter, follow the GPS, keep the speed right, keep the line straight, run through it, make sure you've accounted for the layback on the fish, so your fish leaves the search line. Big lazy turn, line up the next one, down the next line. That's all the boat skipper does. The boat skipper's not looking out the window, not putting the kettle on. The boat skipper is head down, on the instruments, driving straight lines as best as possible. They're never straight, but you can get close. The second crew member is the sonar operator. And the sonar operator, you guessed it, just operates the sonar. The sonar operator doesn't care where the boat is because that's trusted to the skipper. The sonar operator has to make sure that at all times there's just the right amount of sound in the water. And that is constantly being adjusted. If you've got, for example, a shoreline on that side and falling away lakebed on that side, you'll get a lot of reflection off this surface. You might want to wind that down a bit so you don't white out your display. You might want to wind a bit more on here because you can have a little bit more range and see. And this is constantly an adjustment, and it's done, this make you smile, with this, which has all the controls on it to fly the sonar, and you can twiddle and you can select channels and you can do all manner of fancy things, little joystick. And this particular item is called a rat. And when I asked the manufacturers, why is it called a rat? They said, well, because it's just a big mouse. So there you go, that's what drives the sonar, that's the rat. So your sonar operator is just grabbing the best possible data, maintaining the fish height via the winch operator, who's the third member of the crew, and if necessary, letting the boat skipper know, you know, if we're going to crash, we can either winch up on the fish or we can accelerate the boat a little and that will fly out. But those 2 roles, if all goes well, neither 2 speak to the other, one relies on the other. So we're gathering marvellous data. The third member of the crew is the winch operator, who you would think, well, that's easy. You stand there with the winch control, sonar operator says up, you go up, says down, you go down. But no, because the winch operator is the eyes and ears of the operation. The winch operator is the only one who's got time to run around and look on deck and see what's going on. And you could have something like, for example, let's take Coniston Water for an example. You get these little parties of kids in canoes, and they're canoeing across, and they don't go very fast. They've got a couple of people with them, a couple of grown-ups to look after them, and they just bimble across. Now, we can't go around them. We can't just plough through the middle of them. If they are going to land where we're going to land, that's it. And we might have to abandon a line. We might can slow down a little bit and let them get by. If it's touch and go and winch the fish up a bit, we might can speed up a little bit and put a bit more string out on the fish to get ahead of them. You also get Mr. and Mrs. Miggins doing half a knot because there's no wind, having a cup of tea on their sailing boat, you know, straight across in front of other little passenger ferries, this kind of thing. So there's always a lookout has to be maintained for that sort of thing. And in the worst case, like I say, we'll abort a line and then we'll just have to make the turn and run that line again, which usually means you've run it in the other direction, which means your layback in the post-processing is the other way. If we're going that way, the fish is behind. You're coming back, it's that way, it's on the same line. So if you've done a line backwards, you have to make a note of that. So that's the 3 crew. And very often people say, oh, can I come out shipwreck hunting with you? Well, yeah, if you want to be bored senseless and be quiet all day. People think it's romantic, it very often isn't. It's real drudgery. And another thing that people often think is, oh, sidescan sonar, it takes pictures. I go diving at the weekend, I want a sidescan to take pictures of shipwrecks. Forget it. Forget it. If you're a diver and you want to find shipwrecks, don't mess with this. Maybe get one into image your wreck for curiosity later. If you want to find wrecks, get yourself a magnetometer. because it is 1,000 times easier to use, 1,000 times more reliable and effective. Forget all this nonsense. So anyway, that is the sidescan system, our sidescan system, and for its day it was very, very good. Few images for you to have a look at, a few little bits and pieces. I mean, here is an image shot at 150 kilohertz. You can see it's a wreck. It's quite obvious it's a wreck, but you can't see anything about it. Here is the same wreck shot at 675 kilohertz. That's the difference. In this one you can see the deck beams, you can see the boiler, you can see the engine, you can even see the sponges and the scour on the bottom. That is the difference between the frequencies. This is Britannic. We shot Britannic in 110 meters of water. These images are still getting on for being the industry standard. You know, these are really good images. Little collier smashed in half. You can see it's been torpedoed, the middle's collapsed. You can see the bow and the stern and the boiler. These are all really nice shots. The Regina, it's a Canadian corvette. It's sunk in the Bristol Channel. It was torpedoed and snapped in half, and we flew through the gap between the two halves. It's a really nice image. So this stuff is very valuable. But for what we did in Coniston, this is what we got. There's nothing to see. It is mud. There is a canoe. There's a canoe for you. There is the hole that we pulled the wreck out of in 2001. That's quite curious. The rectangular hole was still there in 2007, and it'll still be there today. But the bit that we went looking for, which is the part of Bluebird's frame, that bit was missing. This is all you could see on the sonar. It was just a tiny little crumb. And these are the sort of objects that we were lifting, but it worked. And how we lifted them, how we got eyes on them, ROVs on them, divers on them, and got them in the boat, that is a completely different story. This is just the large area mapping and the pinning down of the targets. So if you thought that was interesting, give me a like. Did I say subscribe? Well, subscribe anyway. And I'll do another one if you like, and I will see you again hopefully next week. I'm still working on a film about the airbrush art. We'll get that out sooner or later. But yeah, ask away, see you in the comments. Have a good weekend. Ciao.